afternoon, I'm Mai Rodriguez. Today on Newsfeed at noon, another House committee opens an inquiry into the Duterte administration's bloody anti-drug campaign. Former police colonel Rohina Garma, a key witness to the drug war, is facing money laundering and human rights cases in the U.S. More than 40 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong sentenced to up to 10 years in jail in the Chinese territory's biggest national security trial. And tennis great Rafael Nadal set to end his remarkable career with one final match. Thanks for joining us. The House Committee on Public Order opens an inquiry into the bloody drug war of the Duterte administration. Let's get updates from Zandro Ochona, who joins us now on the line. Zandro, to be clear, is this separate from the probe being conducted by the House Squad Committee, also on Duterte's anti-drug campaign and extrajudicial killings during his term?
Yes, Mai, this is a separate investigation from the House Quadcom, although the Committee on Public Order and Safety is part of the Quadcom committees. Congressman Dan Fernandez says they are holding the inquiry separately so as not to take much time during Quadcom hearings. The investigation is looking into issues concerning 1,286 personnel of the Philippine National Police who were part of former President Duterte's war on drugs. Fernandez said many police officers are facing court cases following the drug war.
Natin sa Quadcom kasi basically maraming focus Hindi lang kasi yung EJK, meron tayong sa Pogo, meron din tayo dun sa corporations, marami Ang naramdaman namin, didiscuss ko to sa mga chairman and we decided na i-separate na lang para hindi makakain ng oras sa Quadcom. And since na wala naman akong hinihiring na iba sa public order, so we decided na dito na muna sa committee natin.
Meanwhile, Fernandez said he is happy that the Justice Department has started its investigation on the possible violations made by former President or by the former Duterte administration under RA 9851 or the Philippine Law on Crimes Against Humanity, and that the government is doing their responsibility on pursuing these possible cases. Mai?
Zandro, about the House Quadcom's own probe. Now, the panel earlier postponed their hearing set for November 21st. Any word on the reason for the postponement?
Well, the Quadcom lead chair, Representative Robert A. Barber, said that they are postponing the scheduled Quadcom hearing on Thursday, November 21, because they need more time to prepare their witnesses and the time needed for securing several documents. The Quadcom follow a very stringent vetting process because they, before they allow resource persons to appear at the hearing. Bye.
Thank you for that update, Zandro Ochona reporting. Former police colonel Rohina Garma, a key witness to the bloody drug war, is facing money laundering and human rights cases in the U.S. Justice Secretary Boying Remulla says this is why Garma remains detained in America. Garma left the Philippines on November 7th but was flagged by immigration officials in San Francisco for a canceled visa.
Kasi Magnitsky Act yun. They actually, after her properties which she stored there, her money laundering activities, and of course the human rights violations that were part of the Magnitsky Act.
Remulla says he has directed the Immigration Bureau to work on getting Garma back to the country via the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty. At a House Quad Committee hearing, Garma linked former President Rodrigo Duterte to drug war killings, which she said were rewarded. She is also being investigated for the killing of former PCSO Board Secretary Wesley Barayuga. Now on to the devastating aftermath of Super Typhoon Pepito. The local government of Catanduanes appealing for help from the national government. Governor Joseph Cua tells BNC's On Point houses in 7 towns are damaged. He admits they don't have enough funds to help affected locals rebuild their homes. Catanduanes is believed to be the area worst hit by Pepito. The Civil Defense Office gives its assurance cash assistance from the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development is available for storm victims.
Ang una pong kailangan tumulong sa kanila, may programa naman ma'am, ang DSUD ng Department of Housing. Meron sila for those who have their houses partially damaged, bibigyan sila ng 10. But we need a list from the LGUs, no? Yung mga qualified and it would be listed, yung may partially damaged houses, bibigyan sila ng 10,000 pesos at yun namang fully damaged or totally damaged, 30,000 pesos. Alam natin medyo hindi malaking-malaki yan, but hopefully
hindi po talaga. Hindi po talaga.
National disaster officials are validating at least 7 deaths due to storms Nika, Ophel, and Pepito. 23 are confirmed injured while 2 are reported missing. The NDRRMC says the storms affected more than 495,000 families or over 1,800,000 people. Estimated damage to agriculture is at 8 million pesos and 496 million pesos for infrastructure. 20 areas have so far declared a state of calamity. Malacanang urging government agencies to avoid lavish Christmas parties in the wake of consecutive storms hitting the Philippines. Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin says the call is in solidarity with millions of Filipinos still grieving the loss of their loved ones, their homes, and livelihood following the series of disasters. He adds the savings from scaled-down celebrations can be donated to storm-hit communities. Heading now to Rio de Janeiro for the G20 summit, leaders of major economies calling for cooperation on resolving conflicts. They issued a statement expressing deep concern about what they described as the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza. They're also calling for a ceasefire in the Palestinian enclave and in Lebanon. World leaders also flagging human suffering and the economic fallout from Russia's war in Ukraine. G20 members are looking to shore up multilateralism before U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, known for his America First agenda, returns to power in January. U.S. President Joe Biden making a grand gesture in his last G20 summit. He announced a record $4 billion contribution to the World Bank's Fund for Poor Nations. The pledge aims to help vulnerable countries tackle climate change as well as healthcare inequities. It's expected to benefit countries in Africa and Asia, but it's unclear if President-elect Donald Trump, who has proposed cutting foreign aid in the past, will honor Biden's pledge.
This is my last G20 summit. We've made progress together, but I urge you to keep going. I'm sure you will, regardless of my urging or not. This group has within its power to usher in a new era of sustainable development, to go from billions to trillions in assistance of those most in need. This all may sound lofty, but this group can lay the foundation to make that achievable.
World leaders are moving without Joe Biden. Quite literally, the U.S. president was noticeably absent in the official photograph of G20 leaders. Also not in the picture were Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who were in a trilateral meeting with Biden. The three arrived late, missing the portrait taken in front of Rio de Janeiro's iconic Sugarloaf Mountain. The White House pinning the blame on scheduling issues, saying the photo was taken earlier than planned. We're taking a break. Up ahead, dozens of pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong are sentenced to up to 10 years in prison on subversion charges. That and more when we return. Keep it here on Newsfeed at noon. back in Newsfeed at noon, former State Auditor Heidi Mendoza says abuse of the congressional power to allocate funds is getting worse. She tells BNC is at the forefront. The key to solving this would be to educate the public on the budgeting process and fund utilization. She believes transparency and education will embolden the people to participate in how state funds are being used.
Kailangan ipaliwanag natin sa taong bayan, ang budget, pera ng bayan. Kung kayo ay nakakatanggap ng ayuda, hindi yan parang tulong. Yan ay pera mo na ibinabalik sa iyo. Naniniwala ako na lalakas ang loob ng mamamayan, i-own up nila, aariin nila, pera namin ito, kailangan nakikialam kami, sumusubaybay kami kung paano ito ginagastos. Dahil nakita natin, palalim ng palalim yung ginagawa nilang pag-abuse ng tinatawag nating allocative power, no? Yung the power to allocate resources.
Mendoza, who's running for the Senate, also says the president needs to have the will to push for his development agenda and not allow Congress to dictate the country's finances. Mendoza adds confidential fund allocations should be carefully studied. On to the COP29 summit in Baku, Azerbaijan, where the Philippines is seeking increased financial support for nations most vulnerable to climate change. The Finance Department says it has been pushing for some $1.3 trillion annually from developed countries. This would cover critical areas such as adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage. The DOF also calls for the dismantling of barriers to climate finance, including prohibitive capital costs, currency risks, and debt burdens. The agency demands climate justice, saying nations least responsible for climate change are bearing its heaviest costs. Countries taking part in the ongoing summit have so far hit an impasse on a new financial goal. As the meeting enters its final week, the UN climate chief urges participants to take the matter seriously.
We'll only get the job done if parties are prepared to step forward in parallel, bringing us closer to common ground. Bluffing, brinksmanship, and premeditated playbooks burn up precious time and run down the goodwill needed for an ambitious package. So let's cut the theatrics and get down to real business.
No military deal among countries should target any third party nor trigger regional tension. That reminder from China after the Philippines and the U.S. signed a new agreement on sharing classified military information and technology. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin sealed that deal with his Philippine counterpart, Gibot Chodoro, during a visit to Manila Monday. In response, Beijing's foreign ministry says, and we quote, "The only right choice for safeguarding national security and regional peace and stability is to uphold good neighborliness and to maintain strategic independence." 45 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong sentenced to up to 10 years in jail in the Chinese territory's biggest national security trial. They were accused of plotting to paralyze the government by engaging in potentially disruptive acts. 2 other defendants were previously acquitted. The so-called Hong Kong 47 were arrested on subversion charges in 2021 under a Beijing-imposed national security law. That law was implemented in 2020 to stop months of massive, sometimes violent, pro-democracy protests. The U.S. vowing additional security assistance for Ukraine. That announcement from Washington's ambassador to the United Nations as the global agency marks 1,000 days since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. U.S. President Joe Biden earlier gave the green light for Kiev to use American missiles to strike Moscow's territory.
The United States will continue to surge security assistance to Ukraine, including artillery, air defense, armored vehicles, and other needed capabilities and munitions. And we will announce additional security assistance for Ukraine in the days to come. Because ultimately, supporting Ukraine in Congress and beyond it cannot be and should not be a partisan issue. Standing up for democracy and human rights is above petty politics and outlasts any one leader or term.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump nominates former lawmaker turned Fox News host Sean Duffy as his transportation secretary. If confirmed, Duffy will be facing major issues with traffic deaths at near record highs, as well as the move from gasoline to electric vehicles. He will also implement Trump's vow of reversing the Biden administration's vehicle emissions rules. Duffy is the second Fox-affiliated TV host in Trump's cabinet, following Pete Hegseth, who was tapped to serve as defense chief. We're taking another breather still to come. Rafael Nadal set to end his remarkable tennis career with one final match. The details when Newsfeed at Noon returns. Stay tuned. You're still watching Newsfeed at Noon. DigiPlus Interactive clarifies its supposed plan to acquire Casino Plus. Billionario.com earlier reported the two companies are set to strike a deal that could potentially reshape the country's online gaming sector. If the buyout were to go through, they would have a combined monthly revenue of some 10 billion pesos. But DigiPlus says while acquisitions have always been a part of their strategic plan, there are no definitive plans at this time. Dito Holdings, the telecom company owned by businessman Dennis Uy, prices its follow-on offering of shares at just over 1 peso each. That's more than half of the company's initial maximum indicative price of 2 pesos and 15 centavos per share. If all shares are sold, the offer could raise around 2 billion pesos. The offer period will run from November 20th to 26th. This was originally set for late September, but was postponed to allow investors more time to evaluate the opportunity amid the current market conditions. From its debut in 2014, Toyota Motor Philippines is set to expand its iconic Vios Race series next year. This time, they may let rival brands join the action. Our mobility correspondent G. Baroga takes us to the racetrack.
Toyota Gaza Racing Philippine Cup closes its 2024 season with 35 Vios race cars on the grid. Drivers come from across the country, all sharing the same love for cars and motorsports. This year's revamped series featured 3 high-octane race weekends, with the final round showcasing a heart-pounding showdown for the season's title. Toyota Motor Philippines President Masando Hashimoto, who's also part of the grid, has had a fantastic season while sharing his hopes for the upcoming year.
We know that this Vios TGR Philippine Cup is one of the biggest racing format among the racing scene. So we want to make it bigger, and then furthermore, we improve this event to gather more people inside. Not only Toyota people, but also we can across any other brand as well. That is my dream.
Hashimoto-san's vision is inspired by Japan's Super Taikyo Race series, where motorsports isn't just about winning, but about bringing people together.
So many people gather together and get connected. Not only racers or motorsports members, but also some media or even government officers or suppliers as well. So all the members come together at the racing venue, and then they utilize this circuit salon as a social or community.
Toyota plans to fuel the future of motorsports with the TGR Philippine Cup, building on its mantra, "We love cars." For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
And before we go, one last dance for tennis great Rafael Nadal as he leads Spain in a match against the Netherlands this Tuesday at the Davis Cup in Malaga. This will be the last official tennis tournament of the 22-time Grand Slam winner. It's a bittersweet moment for fans of Nadal, who's also a 14-time French Open champion.
I feel very sad. Very sad, and I remember playing and watching in 2002, 2003 when Federer. It was wonderful moments, but for 20 plus years he's been a remarkable player. One of the best, if ever best, in the world.
The 38-year-old Nadal will likely suit up alongside Carlos Alcaraz, rekindling the partnership they had at this year's Paris Games. And those are the news this hour. I'm Mai Rodriguez. Keep it here on BNC, the Billionaire News Channel. Good afternoon.